Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting Finance Committee meeting for the Albany Common Council. As we are not moving anything, we do not yet have a quorum, but we're going to begin the discussion. And as more members join on, we'll recognize them and continue to ask questions. So we have a committee member, Alfredo Ballerin. We also have Richard Conti, Joe Igo. For staff, we have both Nicks tonight. So we've got Superpower Nick team, both Riley and Blaze. We have Michelle Andre. We have Danielle Gillespie, John Rafael Pichardo, and also joining us tonight are Darius Shahinfar, an amazing treasurer, and from we've got Rachel McEnany and Anne-Marie Salmon, all joining us this evening to answer questions. We also are joined by committee member Jamel Robinson. Welcome, Jamel. So I'm not sure who'd like to go first, but I will turn it over to whoever would like to. If you guys were in the same room, you could arm wrestle, but otherwise I will let you decide your feat of strength.
I can talk about the debt now if you want.
Why don't we let Rachel go first, just because I have a feeling that Judy's going to want to ask you some questions, Darius.
Really?
I think.
Darius, let's be serious here for a minute. We have to discuss.
I'm totally serious.
I think I was the least serious of everybody, so.
So I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you that you had received a few days ago to review. I'm hoping you had time. If not, I believe we're going to share a screen tonight. There we go. As always, it's a pleasure to come to you tonight. It's something I like to learn about the Department of Administrative Services. In the last 3 years, we have grown exponentially. We have really become the administrative backbone to the city of Albany. Our goals is what we do is we streamline functions. We provide support to all the departments in the city, and we continue to try to find and create efficiencies and increase productivity. So I want to talk a little bit about, these are the offices that we cover, and then I'm going to go right into what we do. I have a little bit of a echo, so I'm going to actually close my door. So hold on a second. You can hear everything, sorry. There we go. Sorry, that was a reverb. So as you can see, you work with many of the departments that are listed here. That is our team. I'm going to go right into some of the highlights of what we do. We provide, just up to year to date, we have provided protection of over 50,000 phishing attempts. So last year, and we talked a lot about the ransomware attack. We provided over 2,000 IT help desk requests. We have also initiated online forms used by over 3,000 residents and employees. We facilitated the purchase of 250,000 items of PPE for city staff, and we also produced virtual events with over 65,000 views. Virtual events are all our special events after we all went inside after the pandemic. This year, again, we accepted over 2,900 applications for jobs and civil services, and then which include our authorities, the schools, and the library. We also, our energy manager is under our department, and we converted over 9,560 street lights to LED to date. We only have a little over 1,000 to go. Most of them are decorative, and we're very excited because we are already seeing that savings. And what's very important with this city, and we'll talk about it later on, is each week we administer $1.5 million of payroll every single week, meaning we start a payroll the day after we pay people. And we have 13 bargaining units and lots of codes throughout our unions. And it's a very complicated process, and it keeps us very, very busy. So there's never a day off. And again, we manage MWB compliance, and we produced over $42 million in city contracts just this year. And So I want to talk about this year. I really wanted to talk about our story, and it was really for us a new way of working. We pushed through by necessity, and we didn't miss a beat. Every single individual who worked in our department never stopped working. We deployed technology, mainly laptops, to all of our workforce. We held virtual public meetings, and 30% of the city workforce was allowed to be able to work from home. We safeguarded the city's fiscal health. We implemented a hiring freeze, which saved us $1.6 million, and we put in strict spending controls, and which also saved us $3 million. We also oversaw the FEMA reimbursement application, and hats off to our great budget department. The Knicks are on the phone. We were the first municipality to be approved for reimbursement. And we led the city on work from home policies and creating and working with the state on the COVID-19 protocols. To continue on about our COVID-19 response, we wanted to support our employees through COVID-19. We established emergency leave and paid sick time. We established a child needs assessment survey to really understand our employees and what they were struggling with. And sorry, my thing went dark. What they were struggling with their childcare needs at home. And we were connecting employees with the resources they need. Our EEO office and the work and the support we needed to offer folks during COVID-19 is real. The stress in our families there's a lot of pressure on our employees right now. And we were able to reopen City Hall, and administrative services turned to the City Hall Ambassador Program. And that's a program that is controls every public who comes in there. We take their temperature, we guide them through City Hall. And I have to say hats off to the city clerk's office in my department, because many of all those employees, that they switched their job and they reimagined it, and they stepped up and helped us get City Hall open in a timely manner. We also adjusted all office layouts to promote the social distancing, and we also created some signage and health screening protocols. We also, continuing with our commitment to diversity, we translated all COVID-19 resource guides into multiple languages for our public and our employees. So now I get to talk about technology and innovation, and we really have turned to more of a virtual look, and we are no longer in a wait and see attitude. We have improved our network security. We have continued to upgrade all of our desktops to the latest operating system. And this is kind of exciting. And I also look at Danielle Gillespie on the call. We digitize forms and applications. And through our small innovation and performance department, we were able to marry people and create a marriage license application, something that we weren't able to do before. But thanks to the state and a really strong clerk, we were able to build lots of applications that allowed the people to apply for jobs and continue to get their CDBG funding. And these were all very, very important programs during COVID, because we really wanted our city youth to continue to have jobs. We wanted people to get married. And we also wanted to get necessary funding, an emergency funding that became available to those who desperately, desperately needed it. And then we also implemented an online benefits enrollment for employees, which includes all of you. This year, you will do all of your online benefits online. It is something and a goal that we wanted to happen last year. We were able to push through and make that happen. So I think our long-term workforce has gone much more digital. So how did that happen? We now do all our training and professional development online. We were able to roll it out and do professional development training. Many of our employees use the LinkedIn Learning tool and really strengthen their skills. And we asked our managers and our leaders and our commissioners to create learning paths. So our employees who were home had opportunities to learn stronger skills, whether it was learning Excel or maybe looking at softer skills that they wanted to improve in. And we have a lot of data that people were using it and they found it as a great tool. So we have a lot of requirements for every year for the state, and legislation that you smartly passed for diversity inclusion training, workplace violence and sexual harassment prevention. I'm happy to say that we are in very, very good shape of meeting the deadline, which is tomorrow, that our employees are using this platform. And so we haven't missed a beat. The other issue I'd like to talk about is our cultural affairs and virtual event planning. When I talk about going digital, we took a 5-year plan of innovation and we did it in 5 months. The cultural affairs department really became virtual and they reimagined their positions. And I'm very excited what they're going to be rolling out the next 6 months. And I encourage you to continue to support them as they have reimagined it and worked and even have stronger relationships with many of our arts organizations and our local artists who are having a very, very difficult time in this time period. So I want to switch to something very important to you, and that's sustainability. We hired our first energy manager this year, and many of you have met him, and he has done a terrific job so far. But again, change is hard work, and one of his biggest responsibilities is our city streetlights, which we smartly purchased. And he has been helping us with converting 89% of our city streetlights to energy efficient LED technology. We believe we are on track to be done this year. The streetlight savings will speak for itself. Some of the areas that we had struggled with were a lot of our grants and were on hold due to COVID, but it looks like we're back on track. NYSERDA is very anxious to work with us, and I'm happy here to announce that we're working on a 10 electric vehicle dual charging stations with the Sustainability Committee and your input of where they'll go. And we're really, really looking forward to that, as well as completing the city's first greenhouse gas emission inventory, which we have not done since 2012. So my budget, let's talk about my budget, our budget. The 2021 proposed budget overview for admin services. We are continuing to work in the spirit of what we've always been trying to do, and that's centralizing all administrative functions. We are looking to bolster our purchasing and procurement department, and there's no better person to run that department than Kim Wilcox. Kim Wilcox, who many of you have known, has been our payroll director. She is a 20-year employee of the city of Albany. I was very, very fortunate when she came over to admin services and took over a centralized payroll. She has not missed a beat. She prepares and works and monitors, and you can get Kim at 3 in the morning. I'm going to tell you that I would say at 3 in the morning, the day the ransomware attacked, Kim Wilcox was the one who got a call from an employee who was having trouble with her Chronos. That was a Saturday morning. So we also looked at what her work and responsibilities were, and she worked very closely with all my team members in project management and budget to look at a model of a centralized purchasing and procurement office. And she's also going to continue to run the payroll department. That being said, we are also going to be bringing her deputy up a few $1,000s for the increased workload. This budget overall will be a $4,275 decrease, and we're very, very excited about this change. And if I can change the slide, I just want to end with this about where we're moving and how we're moving forward in a department. And, you know, we have a lot of goals and they're 2 pages long, and I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, but overall, we want to provide direct administrative and customer support to the entire city workforce, which includes you as well. We're going to continue to facilitate diversity in recruitment, retention, and promotional opportunities. We're going to professionalize our workforce through training and development and opportunities. And we're going to continue to lead innovative projects to improve our workflows, streamline processes, and improve customer service. And we are continued with our continued commitment to cybersecurity investment, because we have to protect our city's infrastructure and our information and our assets. And we'll continue to deploy resources and technology to support the changing needs of our employees and departments during this pandemic. In close, we are going to continue to work on a 5-year technology infrastructure and equipment replacement budget to maintain our existing network standards. We're going to roll out more online forms and payment systems for our permits and applicants, replacing all paper-based processes. We're going to conduct an audit of workers' compensation claims. We're going to RFP the City of Albany's third-party administrator. It is something that was one of the first actions that I came in when I came into you 4 years ago as your budget director. It's time. We're going to look at them again, and we're going to continue to try to lower our workers' compensation claims. We're going to also have a survey of our city-owned buildings and plan for future space needs and capital projects. We have 52 buildings in the city of Albany, and we really have to take a deep dive of how they're being used and how we move forward. We're going to continue and conduct energy audits and work with departments on sustainability plans. And again, and I want to close, we're going to be reimagining cultural affairs, events, and programming. We hope that the Tulip Fest will happen this year. We just don't know. We may be looking at smaller events. We're also looking at cultural affairs as a department that can really do what the rest of administrative services do, is to support all of our departments across the departments on all their events and their special programming and their tech needs, graphic design needs. And we're very, very excited to be working with Elaine Medina on that. And that is the conclusion of my department budget.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And a special thank you for getting that to us early so we were able to go through it. Are there any questions first from committee members? And you can either raise your hand or do it virtually. It's a bit easier virtually, but I know sometimes that's hard to find. Go ahead, Richard.
Thanks, Rachel, for your presentation. I have a question that related to the impact of the COVID-19 on the city workforce.
Yeah.
And to what extent the workforce has been impacted. I don't know, in terms of tracking numbers of employees that may be in quarantine, is that something that you're doing, or can you give us some information on that?
Yep. So weekly, we have kind of a tracker system that we created, which what we do is we track employees in a lot of different categories of whether they're symptomatic, not symptomatic, who they were in touch with. And we share that probably on a daily or maybe every other day status. During the height of COVID, it was twice a day.
Right.
Because at that time, our fire department had a lot of exposure until we were able to come up with some solutions working with Albany Medical Center to get them quickly tested. And because we would have been in serious trouble. That has been fairly successful, and that is something that I know the mayor and it's one of the first things we look at in the morning. So yes, we do track them, and it's something I'd be happy to share. It doesn't have their names on it, but it is done by department.
Yeah, if you can provide us information by department.
Sure.
In terms of the numbers that, that might be in quarantine. There's been some chatter out there about APD and DGS right now particularly being impacted. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I've been hearing some of that, and I think it'd be helpful to council members to know what the impacts are and what impact that potentially has on service delivery.
Sure. So again, we always keep our employees' health, we try to keep it as confidential as possible. I'm unfamiliar with an APD outbreak at the present moment.
Yeah, I don't know if I call it an outbreak or not, but
That's
I can.
okay. But we also have a lot of employees, and this is just for anyone's knowledge. We continue. They are diligent with mask wearing. We try to provide really excellent cleaning services right now to make them feel safe. We constantly remind our offices that socially distance, spread out. Those who can work from home, try to work on rotating schedules. And then there's just some jobs that cannot require that. So it's when I say that in general, people are stressed out, yes, we do have an increase of employees that are stressed for lots of different reasons, whether it's childcare, their job, their life. And so we have an EAP system, and it is an employee assistance program, and it is definitely more robust than in previous years. So if anything, we'll probably really be tracking that budgetarily and something you want to look at next year. If we have to increase that service, because a lot of people need help.
And right now, in terms of cultural affairs programming and events and festivals, I think Pyro Tulip Fest is the first one that would ordinarily come up. So right now, you're moving forward with the possibility of doing a live festival as opposed to going virtual. At what point, I think Tulip Fest is the first one. What point do you have to make a decision whether or not that happens or it goes virtual or some other format?
Well, I'm not a professional event planner, but I mean, we definitely have to take a lot of our direction from the state of New York,
Right.
of what type of event we could actually produce outside. So I would say that we will, we still want to engage our sponsors because they really do help us a lot. And some of the programming is fairly strong. And we have a much closer relationship with like the Palace Theater and the Downtown Bid, and trying to collaborate and work together to especially keep our creative community fed, you could say. But at the same time, cultural affairs, when they're not producing events, are absolutely embedded in admin services. So they manage the ambassadorships at the front desk when anyone enters City Hall, which is a lot. They also are in my payroll department. They are doing backfill in the human resources department. So they're helping out in lots of different departments, and they also have a really great skill set. So many of them come with graphic design and tech experience of mixing and doing podcasts and being able to do a little music but also the events that the departments do. When I think of DGS and the police department, when they are outward facing, could really look at cultural affairs as an asset for their events. Because once again, one of the reasons, the spirit of admin services is to get folks to not be so worried about getting 3 bids on something they have to buy. They need other people to do that. Well, we want to do that as well with their outward facing events. We believe we can support the other departments in working on their events with the public, whether it's planning, the police department. We look at a lot of their outreach, and we're hoping that they're really going to be able to help us, especially as we go digital, to reach more people, because they're just better at it.
And so a large part of the cultural affairs programming and staff in the department is supported by event sponsorship. To what extent are you continuing to get sponsorship revenue?
Well, obviously it's down a little bit, but we continue to engage our corporate sponsors with all the events. So they have Cash for Coats that is coming up next month. They have a fall festival that supports farmers markets. So Alay Medina, who's the director, who really comes with a strong background in sponsorship sales, it's just that continued communication engagement. So when we're ready to go, they'll be there to support the city of Albany. And there are ways. You see MVP helping the police department out. There are those corporate sponsors that then also support like the 5K every year. So we have to just keep them engaged in all city events. And then when and if we're able to go back to these wonderful historical cultural events, they'll be ready and engaged,
Okay, thank you.
I just want to note that Judy Deshay, Committee Member Judy Deshay is here, Councilmember Hoey is here, and Councilmember Kimbrough is here. And Councilmember Robinson, go ahead with your question.
Thanks, Rachel. I see that you have looks like the new city website is going to be out late 2020. Is there a actual date that's on the books right now for it to be rolled out? And can you speak to some of maybe the features of that new website as a sneak peek?
Oh, Jamel. The website is being run out of there's a committee. My IT director is on it. The features that we are really working on right now is the intranet, which we're trying to launch first for our employees to make sure that that's in place so they're able to use all the modules for their benefits and training and whatnot. So the second piece is then the external piece, which I believe is going to be out and it'll just be, we're hoping for that, for the services to be very available for folks if they want a job, if they want to be able to pay their parking ticket, they want to work on the work in the treasurer's office. I have my wish list of the website, but again, there's every single department is going to own their own content on their website. So because admin services is not as public facing, I'm worried about the back end, which is of course our security and as well as it's behind. I get to do like the not pretty parts. Sarah Camp, who works in the mayor's office, is the project manager on it, but I can get you more information.
Thank you.
I can't wait for a new website either, though. It's very 1997. Sorry, Joe Igo.
Councilmember Hoey.
We didn't have one in 97.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you, Rachel. It was a very nice presentation. Just a couple of fast questions. Did we lose any employees to COVID, or is that like public, not public? Or and the other second question would be, do we have anybody that's like long-term disabled because of it? I'm just that's some of the things.
No, those are very good questions. We are very fortunate we have not lost an employee to COVID. That being said, how the city manages workers' compensation is through a third-party administrator. And it is we are really waiting for more legislation of how we are tracking those who have COVID, which I think is what Councilman Conti is interested in, is seeing where the trends are. But also down the line, we don't know how COVID is going to fester in someone's body, right? So we could have, so if you go back to 9/11 and we look at those who were down in 9/11, some of their symptoms did not show up 6, 7, 10 years down the line. So they are being tracked as workers, worker compensation claims when they recover, in case that comes back. But again, we need further state legislation to understand this virus and its lasting effects. So stay tuned. So,
Thank you.
Are there any other further questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joe.
Rachel, explain to me, because this question was asked to me. We have 40-some employees vacancy in the DGS, okay? And jobs supposedly were offered back and they didn't want them. Now, if that's the case, can you still get unemployment?
Gosh, very good question. I think that you'd have to check with unemployment if they're tracking their employees to see how many jobs that they're applying to. So I'm really not sure.
That's the way it used to be. Someone asked me. I said, I'm not familiar with it at all.
I think the number is a little high in DGS. I think there's about, I don't think it's that many vacancies, but yes, I would definitely say that there is a level in that particular workforce in recruiting that it's just either the salary isn't competitive enough or they're just making more on unemployment. Because the stimulus wasn't continued, now folks are just making unemployment. I don't think they're making that much outside of it's less, but it's not the same.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very hard. This workforce is generational. They're all very, very different skill sets. And it's something that I definitely think you should bring up on the DGS presentation as well, because they are making those offers as we speak, but they are aggressively hiring.
Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any other questions? Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for that really wonderful presentation. We really appreciate it. And please thank your team for all the hard work that they do. The city, we could have been in many, I mean, between the ransomware and COVID, it could have been way, way worse. And it's hard for everyone, but as a city, we're getting through it. And a lot of that's because of your team's hard work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Darius, that means you're up.
That means I have to unmute. Hello, everybody. I'm back again. I I sent out the debt report for 2020 a little bit earlier in the day. I think everyone should have received it. I don't know if we're able to put it up on here or if you can just refer to a document on your computer. It's fairly straightforward. I also included the breakdown of our fiscal stress score from the State Comptroller's Office, as well as the environmental fiscal stress score, which is a separate thing. For those of you who haven't heard, we're no longer fiscally stressed. 2019, our budget and the responsible management of it brought us out of a fiscal stress designation. So for 2019, we're off that list, barely by about a point, but that's certainly great news financially. And one of the reasons why it's great news is because going into now 2020 and COVID crisis that we have, it's enabling us to ward off some of the worst of the worst, at least thus far. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it froze for a second. I fully expect that we'll be back in fiscal stress for, as designated by the controller for the 2020 budget, but it's not going to be as bad as it probably could have been. For the debt report, what you have in front of you is a fiscal stress score. It just kind of lays everything out. It's really one of the things you come to understand looking through it is that it's very fund balance heavy. It's a huge component of the fiscal stress score, particularly in the first, I think 2 or 3 categories there, maybe the 4th category too. So the more fund balance you have, the less stress you're going to be under as a municipality, which of course I think makes sense. You can move on to the debt report unless anybody has any questions on the fiscal stress score.
And does anybody have any questions on the fiscal stress score? Seeing none, why don't you go ahead onto the debt report, Darius?
The debt report, the first, it's the first page and a half essentially is mostly a rehash of information that's already been provided to you over the past several debt reports. The first chart on page 2 is just a breakdown of what our debt expenses are compared to our budget. As a target and as a matter of city policy, we try to keep within 10% of our total budget expenses. So from the city of Albany, what you want to have is debt expenses that are in the neighborhood of no more than $18 million a year. For the purposes of our debt policy, we've excluded landfill debt. So that's why, even though we're paying out more than $18 million a year in debt service, it's not, for the purposes of our city's debt policy, it's not counted that way. For the purposes of fiscal stress, however, it would be counted. The good news is that this is the last year of really a large-scale landfill debt. You can see here under 2020, there's about $6 million of landfill debt that we're paying off this year, and that will be, we have $1 million more than next year and the year afterwards, but that's it as far as landfill debt is concerned. Again, in the verbiage underneath, that's all information that's largely been already provided. On page 3, there is one change that is different from what I had brought to you last year, and that's in the last paragraph above the debt issued versus debt retired graph there. The pay down for the bans for 2020 in 2021 for our 2020 ban is not going to be 4.2 million as we had expected and budgeted for, but it is going to, well, I guess for 2021 budget we hadn't budgeted for it yet, but it was expected to be $4.2 million, and now it's gone down to $3 million. And that's a direct result of something that I mentioned last night when I was on the call, where the state had extended ban rollovers from 5 years to 7 years. In other words, you can keep rolling over your ban every year for 5 years before. Now we can do it for 7. And what that did was it allowed us to pay down less of our ban next year when we paid off our annual pay down of the ban. Going forward, you know, we'll have to see what the decisions are going to be made as far as borrowing for next year. I'll cover that in a little bit. The next chart below it is debt issued versus debt retired. You know, to the naked eye, it looks great. We've retired, you know, over $100 million in debt, and we've only incurred about 73 or so, 73 and a half. What the chart does not account for in 2021 is what debt is that we are going. I mean, we would pay off some debt next year, but I'm sorry, we would obviously we're paying off the debt, but we're not going to be incurring a debt payment for next year in 2021 as far as a bonded debt payment, which is what the two columns in 2018 and 2019 are. Band debt amount does not count in this for the purposes of this graph, but and for many other purposes as well. But going forward, we are going to have a debt issuance next year. I'm positive that we'll be bonding at least something, unless something dramatically happens with the interest rates, the way that it did actually this year, when things went really haywire just around the time that we were going out to essentially sell our debt, when the interest rates all of a sudden began fluctuating because it was the same week that COVID really hit. So we decided to ban in 2020 rather than bond. But bear in mind that even with this chart, as far as debt issued, debt retired, it does not count ban debt for it. And we won't. 2022 is when you'll see a fairly big jump, I think, in bonded debt. The section in red was negligently left as red instead of black, so there's nothing to pay attention to in specific there. It's just basically it lays out essentially what the debt service is, and that we need to take into account that about $60 to $65 million we have outstanding as far as borrowing in 2021, whether that is as a bond or as a bond and a ban, we're not entirely positive yet. I think the chart is really just generally the 10% figure. It shows a 10% figure of debt service to general fund expenses to budget. We're at the 10% level there. The next graph on the next page is the percentage debt service minus the landfill expenses, and that's you know, that speaks for itself right there. We're within everything that we want to be for 2021. The following page is the outstanding debt schedule. Again, this is nothing that's really you know, news to anybody because it's been provided before. The only adjustment, if you go down in that first column, if you go down to the ban pay down, that's reduced from 4.2 to $3 million, as we discussed before. So, you know, it gives us a little bit more breathing room next year, which I think is going to be helpful and that we can use. The information underneath in the verbiage is essentially more, you know, just kind of discussing the debt schedule a bit. I think I note in the report on the following page that approximately $2.2 million per year in debt services for the streetlight purchase, and that was something that is paying for itself, and also realizing reduction in costs at the city, which has been quite helpful. The question I think a lot of people will have going forward as you go through the bond authorizations for this year is how much, you know, what can we handle going forward. You can see on the debt schedule there how precipitously our debt falls off both for 2021 and thereafter. So that's, you know, there's room in there to expand debt service if we so choose. However, we choose to manage that over the next few years. And a good guideline, I put this in the report last year, and it's kind of just a rough outline for everyone here of what to expect. I think if we were to bond next year in 2021, everything We've seen an increase in debt service payments anywhere in kind of, depending on how long we decide to issue the bonds for, anywhere between 4.8-ish to 7.2-ish million dollars in additional debt service, but that would be starting in 2022, not 2021. If it would be less if we borrow less, it would be less if we do, kind of chop up the borrowing partially into a band and the rest into a bond. But that's kind of the rough framework that would be in kind of a worst case scenario of what we've been looking at. The lower figure would come if we extended the term of borrowing. The higher figure is if we had a shorter 10-year term of borrowing. I think that's really about it. The final portion of the report, the estimated overlapping indebtedness, is really just kind of lays out what school and county bonding are. It's not something that's really entirely relevant to, I think, our deliberations and your deliberations here, but it's something that you should be aware of. It's something that we're required to report in our operating statements when we issue our bonds. Something that the markets take into consideration as well. The last section, of course, is the city bond ratings. We're A+ with stable outlook. Thankfully, that outlook was granted the week before COVID really hit last year. The good news is I think that markets have really kind of stabilized a bit. Standard & Poor's was for a time being basically giving all municipalities a negative outlook. That has changed a bit. The good news is that we've been responsible about our budgeting, we're responsible about our borrowing, we've been responsible about our 2019 budget, which provided a larger fund balance. We also are, one of the upsides of the state not, pulling its fair share really at the city as far as revenue given to the city compared to other upstate municipalities, is that we're less, the proposed 20% cut of local aid affects the city less than it does, say, the city of Schenectady, Buffalo, Syracuse, Rochester, Utica, et cetera, or the school districts for sure. Our bond rating, I think, outlook is still pretty strong. I think the markets will still view it that way. I've already covered the fiscal stress score, so I think that would bring my presentation to a conclusion, the report to a conclusion. So if anybody has any questions, let me know.
I'll take questions from committee members first. I see your hand, Tom, and go ahead.
Darius, I'm doing wishful thinking here. If the election turns out really good on November 3rd, what happened we saw when President Obama was elected was like a mass infusion to projects and states and stuff. Do we have stuff lined up that if something like that were to happen, we're ready to go, with bonding and stuff like that?
Well, it's more a question, I think, for individual departments if they have thoughts and plans and ideas if they want to, a wish list basically if they want. I think, as far as bonding, the good part about the debt management over the last few years is that we stand ready to, if necessary, if all of a sudden money becomes available to say, add more money or displace city money in redoing Lincoln Park, for example, or Washington Park, or historic City Hall, then we stand ready to either figure out a way to switch out city money for bonded monies or for grant monies, which I would hope would come from the administration. We would hope, but also if something came available, that we can take the opportunity to do that and also figure out what our bonding obligation and component of that would be. So if it's a 20% match from the city, then we're able to kind of to go out and do something like that. So the biggest hope that we have and that I have, I think, from a change in the administration is getting the pandemic relief bill passed, the one that's sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk. If that happens, then I think we'll be in very strong shape for next year, because all of the hard work that we've done over the last several years won't be undone by the financial mess that we're that we're in right now with the reduction in projected reduction in state aid and sales tax in particular. I do want to note because it's an open question whether or not we are going to get reduced. And the state has been very good. They've already given us part of our capital city funding, and they've already given us part of our 19A payment. The city of Cohoes and some of the cities that are in different budgetary years than we are have started to get cut back 20%. So I think it's fair to think that we will be cut back by 20% when our other payments are due, as our capital city funding payment is essentially coming due, and our AIM payment, which is due in December.
Thank you.
Judy?
You're on mute, I think, if you're talking.
You were definitely on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, there
Sorry
you go.
about that.
We can hear you.
We can hear you
All
now.
right. I'm sorry you can't see me. I'm in transit right now. Ran into a lot more traffic than I anticipated. Darius, I was having a hard time hearing what you projected on page 6 with regard to, it does not include any of our band payments as though they've been bonded. So you were saying if we bonded it, everything that is currently banded, it would add how much per year to that debt service schedule?
It depends on on interest rates, obviously, but also how long we decide to extend the debt. But I think anywhere between $4 and 3/4 and $7.25 million per year in debt service. It's something that we can do, and the first payments wouldn't be due until 2022. So it's something that we can still do under the debt policy without much difficulty. The question will be what we actually, and that's a worst case scenario, I think, where worst is not quite the right term to use. That is the scenario where everything gets bonded all at once. If we are able to use other monies to put towards projects, or we decide that some projects come out cheaper than they were expected to be originally, that figure of what we actually borrow would be less. That's a maximum case scenario, not a worst case. A maximum case scenario, I think, that we would be looking at. But I think the question that we're going to have in our office, and we'll have discussions with Nick and the budget office, is really just how many years should we be bonding for once we do go out to bond? Because if it's if our cash flow needs are really, if it's not coming in the way that we need to, or our revenue isn't coming in the way we want it to, or the expenses are going up, then you obviously more strongly think about extending the term of the bond as opposed to front loading it for the first 10 years.
Oh, we do have a lot of debt that has required pay down periods of 3, 5, and 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So we have limited ability to extend that. I mean, roads, of course, is longer, but there's a lot of shorter term.
It's all governed in the it's like this big giant pool that you put you put all the money into, and then you have to pay off. You're not really paying off the 3-year bond in 3 years. It's kind of all goes together. But for the function of how you calculate it, and the maximum term that you can actually borrow for in a bond, that is governed by the PPUs.
With regard to your retired debt chart versus debt issued, on page 3, this is new, not including the band debt in that, right? In those charts?
I'm sorry?
That's new that you're not including the band debt in those charts.
We are including the band.
Well, for 2020 and 2021, well, for 2020, we should have like 44.6 million being shown in the bar?
For 2020, we should have what?
You're looking, I'm looking, you're not looking at the page that I'm talking about. Page 3, the other side. There we go. Right. So 2020, you're showing no debt issued.
Yes.
And I don't think that we've ever excluded bands from these charts. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But if
No,
we
we do.
are exclude, what?
We always have.
But doing that gives us a, I want to say, gives a distorted picture of our debt and what we're
Well,
issuing.
that's
because
why I fully explained in the bottom that you have to take into account that there's still bond authorizations and a ban that's out there. Where the ban is taken account in here is in the debt retired part. So when we retire, you know, the portion that we actually pay off, that counts as debt retired. It doesn't count as debt issued until we actually issue bonds as opposed to bans.
yeah, so just, you know, want to make sure that people are aware of
Well, that's why I put it in there.
So
why I
if I
included
can I can chime in here, it looks as though for 2020 and 2021, the numbers for debt retired include from the P&I schedules the principal and interest from the bonds as well as the principal and interest from the bands. So for year 2020, the total P&I for bonds was $20,107,406. The band payments were $3.144 million, which adds up to the number that Darius has there. 2021 also for debt retired has the band payments included in there in addition to the bond payments. So they're lumped together, but they're not broken down by what's being bonded and what's being banned.
So it's always challenging to figure out our future, our health with regard to how much we're borrowing when a big part of the picture is in bands for the short term.
Right, which is
and,
why I included in that explanation below it what is still out there and why I'm giving you a figure on the next page of what you could expect to add on to it for the next several years.
Okay, I didn't get to the next page because I got the report a little late. Challenged in many ways. I'm not driving while I'm doing this, but in any case, thank you very much. And I look forward to listening to other questions that people have. I might have a follow-up question via email.
That's fine.
When I'm in a less challenging situation. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions? Go ahead, Alfredo.
I just have a quick question. What are we on? What's the average rate that we're paying? I know rates have gone down at the beginning of the year. So has that improved our situation a bit?
It's hard to give you an average rate off the top of my head. However, I will say that the rates that we went out, the ban rates had gone up a little bit in the last couple of years, and you can see on page 2 where you can see some of the ban interest rates that we've been paying for the last few years. They have gone up a little bit, and we paid more in interest, I think, on the 2020 ban, certainly than we had expected, and certainly more than what was the week before. It was a crazy week. That's all I can say. We actually delayed the issuance of our debt for a few days, waiting to see how the markets would settle. They kind of did, but we're still paying 2.25% on most of the 2020 ban. I will say for the bonds, certainly for 2018 and 2019, they are less than they were in previous years of the bond. So those I think were in the neighborhood between 2.5% and 4%, and it depends on the years. And they're broken down in the they're broken down year by year in the operating statements that we can. I think you can find them on the website. Actually, we posted them up there. So on the front page on the operating statements, you'll see what the final amounts that we're paying per year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions? Okay, of course, we always have the opportunity to, since we just got the report, please go through it, and Darius, I'm sure, will answer any questions by email.
You know where to find me.
We do indeed. So if there are no further questions, we can sign off for the evening. Just a reminder of our upcoming meetings. Next week, we have Thursday, the 15th, we'll be doing APD and AFD. I'm assuming that will be a longer meeting, so make sure that you have snacks and other provisions. And then the following week, on the 19th, there'll be a budget hearing before the first budget hearing before the council meeting. And then on the 21st, we have buildings and regulatory compliance and planning. And then the 22nd, we have DGS. So just to mentally prepare everybody for all of that, I appreciate what everyone is doing. And I hope everybody is safe and that your wards are all kind of coming back together and getting power and everything. And staff, thank you guys so much for everything that you've done and everything you're doing. I really appreciate you. So enjoy the evening, and we'll see each other very soon.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.